Welcome back to another episode of Autonomy Pods Podcast. I'm tongue-tied this morning. It is 7 a.m. in Playa del Carmen. I'm still suffering with a little bit of jet lag, but it is okay. We are here today, and it is Friday, which means that it's Saturday and Sunday tomorrow, which is going to be nice. So today, we are going to speak about how to deal with a cold or flu when you want to stay consistent with your training and stay, somewhat adherent with the things that you've got to do as well when it comes to having a plan, having something in motion, and always wanting to not ruin the rhythm of things. A lot of people call it I don't want to ruin my motivation or discipline, but in fact, it's not really about that. It's about ruining your emotional headspace, your mindset, and letting other things get in the way. So, for me, this is a big topic. This is something that I'm passionate about, more so because I fell into it rather than actually something I deeply, deeply care about, from the existence of time. When I was 7, I went I was going caravanning and camping with my parents, and it was our first time we'd ever bought a tent. And in that, and I promise this story goes somewhere, but in that tent, we were so excited to get it. And I was really, really adamant that we'd try it in the back garden the night before we would go on a holiday to Cornwall. So we get it in the back garden, and me and my dad decide to sleep in it. And we're having this thing. We were having a little barbecue outside in the back garden, playing we're on holiday somewhere. And I think nothing of it. And we just, have a great night, bumping up the blow up beds, and we, get our covers on and we go to bed. And I wake up in the middle of the night, this video for a very, very important announcement. I want to invite you all to our Facebook group. We have a 6 Phases to Forever Facebook group, which is a part of our coaching process that is free, that you can get lots and lots of value on a week-to-week basis. I go live once a week. There's plenty of content in there, and there's always special bonus material. You're looking at getting in shape, or how to stay in shape forever. So if you are wanting that, the link will be here somewhere, and then also it'll be in the description. So guys, see you there, and you get to see my ugly mug on a week-to-week basis. Most people do, and kind of go for a toilet, a wee. So, in those times, and probably still now, when you're tenting, you kind of get a free pass to piss in the garden. So that was something that we ended up doing. So I ended up, going back to behind the shed that we had and just having a wee there. And as I was going to the pee, I fell over one of the guide wires. So the guide wires are the ones that kind of hold the tent in place when it's windy, or just kind of give it its shape and form. So I fell over one of those and not really thought anything of it. I woke up in the morning and I couldn't move. I had a football, only described as a football on my knee, which was, my knee had swelled up to 3 times the size that it was. And I was in a lot of agony. I couldn't really walk. So luckily, my mum is a nurse, or has been a nurse. She's finally retiring this year, which is great. And she was a nurse, and we ended up wanting to kind of get it sorted. She was quite concerned. Normally I'd fall over or get scars or wake up fluey or whatever like that, and she'd be like, "Shut up," when I go to school. And I do all my best to kind of in those times hide underneath the pillow so that I got a fever, etc. But no, it never got past her any time. So with this one, she was really, really concerned. So ended up going to the hospital, and about 5 days later, I'd already had 3 surgeries on my knee. I'd already kind of had to have some really keyhole surgery in the middle to get rid of this infection that I got. Now, it turns out it's called osteomyelitis, and it turns out it's 1 in 1 million people get it when they get a cold, and then they get an injury at the same time. But this is why this topic is so important to me, because ultimately, if I would have, I know I couldn't have done anything about it, but if you can purposely not do anything about it, it would also be quite advantageous. So what happened is that when I had this flu, this virus, or this whatever chesty cough that I had, it was coming on, and it was it was feeling a bit worse, but we're going on a holiday, so I didn't really care. So then when I twisted my knee, I probably in hindsight, when looking at the MRIs and whatnot, I probably ruptured my ACL, clean off the bone. Which is really, really funny, considering that I only found out 2 years ago that I didn't have an ACL, which was really, really funny, because we've been through, the timing of this. By the way, the knee got worse over the years. I was playing professional sport, I was playing, I was doing gymnastics, I was doing football, I was coaching for a living at a really high level. I was, doing everything. My world revolved around sport, movement, and activity, and that was took away from me completely. And at school, they couldn't do anything about that. And basically, I had surgeries at like 14, 16, 18, 20, 23, and 20. It's been a year now, yeah, 28. So I had like 6 surgeries on the knee so far over these years. And it was only last year that they took an MRI and was like, yeah, you don't have an ACL. I was like, okay, fantastic. So I think from an injury like that created this, osteomyelitis anyway, is where an infection or like a chesty cough or something like that, the infection goes down to the specific injured site via those like macrophages and phagocytes and all these like kind of things that are carried within the blood vessel to promote healing. Well, if they're infected, then they go into the site as an infection as opposed to a healing process, which is something I learned about at university, which made me cry because that was very, very deathly. So being able to get that situation often like led me to not being able to play sport and having all these complications in further. And it was simply because of me having an injury whilst also playing, whilst also having a cough as well. So that's why it's super, super, for me, it's an integral part of learning when to push and when to pull in terms of training and helping clients do that. And it's understanding that thing. And that's hence why this podcast is going to be about these elements, because for me, it was big. It changed my life completely. And it's 1 in 1 million. And I know it probably won't happen to anybody else that listens to this podcast. But equally, if you can reduce the acquaintances of these particular fears, then you can live happily ever after without there being some stuff. I recently read that also there was another professional football player that actually got osteomyelitis the same way that I did. But his was on a football field and he was training and he had a cold, sprained his ankle, whatever, either strained his ankle or his low back, osteomyelitis into that. I don't know if it was Michael Owen or not, but so that's why it's really topic. So what we're going to cover today is just going to be simply a few different bits and bobs. One is the emotional side of things around eating during this time period when you're sick and fluey. This other one is should you train and shouldn't you train, and then it's ultimately just coming together in how to kind of down-regulate your nervous system and get the stress response down and get you relaxing as much as possible when you do have said cold or stuff. Obviously, in these times it'll be more based around Omicron or bloody COVID and having those variables as opposed to just a flu like I did when I was younger. But it's equally as important to kind of consider these factors when you are just having those day-to-day stuff. So luckily, if you're feeling flu, you're feeling sicky, you can go and get a COVID test now or a PCR or antigen, which will tell you whether you're sicky or not. When I was fluey, it was either my nose was blocked or it wasn't, So there's an element of objectification that can come now through COVID and Omicron, which is actually fantastic. If you look at the positive side of it, you can confirm or deny that you are fluey or that you're sick or you're just having an off day. So let's say, for example, if you have confirmed that you have got COVID or you've confirmed that you've got Omicron, in those, or you confirm that you have a really big flu, then in those scenarios, you are wanting to stay active, but you're not wanting to do strenuous activity. So if you have a chesty cough, congestion, a nasally, flu, whatever it is, and it comes with the cost of objectification of the tests, then it's your job to rest and it's your job to not spread it to people in the gym. But I'm not getting into COVID politics, but it's your job to stay away from those areas, and it's to rest up as best as you can. Now, this often doesn't mean that a lot of people who think rest up means you can't do activity, but actually the nature of what like doing just a walk is actually much more beneficial from a mental headspace, from a body perspective. You're going to be quite achy and potentially joints are going to be quite painful. You're going to be lounging around on TV, like watching TV all day or lounging in bed. That's not going to be conducive either. That's obviously going to make you feel more like bunged up. It's not going to get your blood moving, not going to get your body moving. So actually the best option for those people that do get Omicron and COVID, are, if they can manage it, will be to stay active in some way, shape or form. It's just like a bit of walking, 5,000 steps, a 30-minute walk, would be absolutely ideal. Just going around in the garden or something like that, or standing up for a little bit, just like you're staying active and like you're not just like vegetating and stuff. And I think it's for the mindset rather as well as the physical state as well. Now, in the olden days when there was no objectification of what COVID and Omicron was, or technically if you get a test and it's negative but you still feel all these side effects, then you'll have to do it on like a rating scale of like 1 to 10. So I rate like 0 being like high flying, you're really feeling really, really good. 5 is where you're like, you've got a persistent cough, but you're managing to function, but you're not at your best. And then 10 is where you're like dying in death, and you're basically bedridden. And I think you should try and pitch for only 1 or 2 on the scale for something that you train with. As an individual, you will have to be aware of your own shortcomings when it comes to rating yourselves on these scales. If you're a hypochondriac, then you need to know that you're a hypochondriac and then maybe manage that a bit better. If you're one of these resilient motherfuckers that are like, I will go to war even if I've got one leg broken, or I will go to work, or I will go to the gym even if I've got this, that, and the other, then you guys just need to be a little bit more. If you rate it a 2, then it's probably a 5. If you're hypochondriacs and you rate it a 6, it's probably a 2. So, looking at this scale is a bit of a case of like, okay, well, how do I feel today? And if it's 2, okay, cool, I'll go and train. If it's a 7, then definitely not going to train. So just having your rating there. And the goal with anything with like rating scales, which is very interesting, is that the more you use them, the more efficient that they get. If you use a rating scale once forever and go, oh, Nathan said use this weighing scale and it's 4 today. 4 means shit the first time you utilize it, because you need to be repetitive so that you've got different numbers to quantify. So one day you might wake up and you're like, yeah, I'm a 2. Tomorrow you might wake up and say, oh shit, I'm a 5. Day after that you might wake up and say that, oh my shit, I'm a 10. So you start learning what your objective measures are of these 0 to 10 scales. So that's really, really important, so that you use them more often. You can't just use it as a one-off. It has to be something that you refine over time, and you'll use it within your normal day-to-day, or hopefully use it in your normal day-to-day. If you're doing any mindset work or anything like that, we like, am I anxious today? 0 to 10. Am I stressed today? 0 to 10. How grateful am I today? 0 to 10. How confident in my own abilities am I? 0 to 10. So you can use these things in a mindset side of things as well, but we'll do a different podcast on that. And then if you are in that 0 to 3 category, then that's where you can kind of go and train. But even if you are training and you have these flu symptoms or you're cold, it's really important that you do not add added pressure or really high levels of strenuous progressive overload to this position. The cold is something that is an infection. We have to value that and we have to honor that, but you can just still go in the gym and move your body. So whether that is, doing 70% of your loads, whether that's picking smaller weights than what you've been doing in your lifts, or whether it's just not working as hard on the lifts as you have done before and not going to failure. Just small things like that will allow you to, and taking more rest periods and probably doing less volume. That's going to be really, really important. 2 sets instead of 3, 10 to 12 reps instead of 6 to 8, not going for a PB instead of, going for a PB. They're going to be just something that you have to honor a little bit more during this time frame, because that would be just honoring the infection per se. So that's really, really key for that. So that hopefully that gives you a little bit of a scale and a sliding scale on how to when you should train and what you should do. In order to help you feel better on those days, you want to kind of look at 2 areas, which is one is promoting better sleep, because that would be the best recovery in the whole world. And then secondly is reducing your stress reduction so that you are more relaxed on the days that your sleep's probably crap. You're probably coughing and spluttering all the time, or you're feeling like crap. These are the days where you want to relax into those days, as opposed to just be pent up and like kind of hyper stressed because you're like, oh my God, I'm missing work, or I'm in pain, or I'm coughing all the time. You get annoyed and then you're bored, and you want to kind of just relax into it so that your body can actually do its job of relaxing your central nervous system and making sure that you are healing the best way possible. So in order to do this, you want to kind of follow a few different different strategies. So one would be making sure that before bed you're having something like a bath with Alba-Soil in to open up the sinuses, to relax in the bath, Epsom salts, do the whole thing. Watch Netflix in there. You want to have a carb meal before bed to help promote sleep and relaxation. So serotonin will increase, and then you will then be able to kind of get off nicely into sleep. You want to look at things like some type of adaptogens that are going to help with the reducing or calming down your central nervous system as best as possible. And something like ashwagandha or Support Max Neuro from Strom and Sleep Stack from Supplement Needs, they will help massively with your ability to relax. Another thing is that if you're going to dose up on paracetamols and ibuprofen, then getting some glutathione would be absolutely amazing. Glutathione is a really, really important antioxidant within the body, and it will deplete with the amount of ibuprofen and paracetamol that you utilize, which is really hard to kind of replenish, and it has so many different variable functions. So when you are using high levels of paracetamol and ibuprofen, you want to kind of make sure you're using glutathione within itself as well. So outside of those things on an immune system basis is just making sure that you feed yourself with nutrition and vitamins to give you best chance of recovery. A lot of people, and this moves me into my final point on this podcast, is that a lot of people make the distinguishing factor about something called emotional reasoning. So emotional reasoning is when you say something like, oh, I'm sick, so therefore I will, and it goes, or I'm stressed, so I will. And that means I'm stressed, I will eat shit, or I will eat chocolate, or I want to feel better, so I'm going to eat KFC. It's all emotional reasoning. If you start this sentence with I want to feel better, or I am this, or I'm stressed, I am unhappy, I am nervous, I am chesty coughed, or I am achy, so therefore I will. They're all unhelpful thinking patterns. And ultimately, the more unhelpful thinking patterns that we have, the more self-sabotage that we do, because we don't believe that our thoughts are that important, but actually our thoughts are the most important thing in our world. Is that there's probably 6,000 thoughts that are going on in each of our brains on a day-to-day basis on average. And not every single one of them is true. And that if you say things to yourself, or you get accustomed to saying things to yourself, like, I'm feeling stressed, so I'll open a bottle of wine. Guess what happens when you feel stressed? You open a bottle of wine, and then you sabotage the results of your goals that you have for your transformation, for the fat loss that you want, for the lifestyle, for the sleep that you want. And therefore you get into this unhelpful habit, and you're like, oh, I can't stop having wine when I'm stressed. It's because you're fucking telling yourself that when you're stressed, I have wine. And it always starts in the brain. It goes thoughts, then it goes emotions, then it goes behaviors, and then it goes actions. It starts with the thinking, ends with the eating or the drinking. It doesn't start and end with the eating and drinking. It starts in the thinking. And that's really, really important to note that. So emotional reasoning will happen when we're in points of feeling poo about ourselves. And it will just show you your example. It will show you dry examples of how you are when you deal with pain, negative emotions, or suffering, or any type of physical pain. Because if you're the type of person that deals with pain via food in normal day-to-day life, you will 100% deal with pain and suffering in sickness and like flu with food. And there's two types of individuals. They will lose their appetite completely. They're the people that are normally like kind of when they get stressed, they lose their appetite, or the sickness is so bad that they lose their appetite. Whereas there's people that actually increase their hunger, and it's probably not from the actual flu themselves. It's from the pain that they're feeling, or the idleness, or the not having anything to do, or it's the boredom, or it's the emotional rationalization. So we have to say super, super clear that, if your relationship with food is already to a point where you're like, I'm stressed, so I eat more. When you're sick, you're just going to do exactly the same, but probably worse, because the gradient of pain will probably get worse. Or you'll be bored, you'll be sitting in bed, you'll be feeling sorry for yourself, you'll be achy, you'll be coughing all the time, and that will just lead to then eating more. So it's really important that we identify emotional rationalization as a unhelpful pattern. And we deem it as unhelpful, or you should deem it as unhelpful, because it doesn't produce a desired response, right? If we look at it logically, if you say, okay, I'm feeling sick, so I'm going to order a Domino's and I want to feel better. Okay, so logically, if you've got a flu, if you're sick, or you've got COVID, does a Domino's solve COVID? Well, there's no research to support that COVID gets defeated by the pepperoni on the Domino's. And it doesn't support that the vitamins and minerals that will actually help with your immune system, the vitamin C, all of the greens, all the fibers, all the small things, the micronutrients that go into these foods, are they going to be in Domino's or chocolate? No. So to logically look at it, if you wanted to feel better, you wouldn't have a Domino's, because that's probably going to make you feel worse. And logically, you're trying to emotionally rationalize the emotional brain wanting that Domino's, as opposed to if you're looking at it logically and with a helpful thinking pattern is, I want to feel better. So what can I eat and what can I do and what can I drink to make myself feel better and help me get over this cold? And then you'd have a different thinking pattern, which would be, okay, cool. So what type of stuff do I need? And that comes down to education. You need the vitamin C, you need the Epsom salt baths, you need, vitamins and minerals from your food. So you need to get fruits, veggies, protein sources, carbohydrate sources into your day to day in normal amounts. So if we're looking at breaking down these unhelpful thinking patterns, we have to change them to helpful patterns, which is going to be, okay, what is actually going to help me legitimately, as opposed to my emotional brain just wanting pizza. So the emotional rationalization will also come in other forms as well, is that, preparation and prep for some people, or living with their parents, is normally a very key factor into this. So within the Asian community, time and time again, especially with the potions and lotions that some families actually come up with from their bar and their aunties when it comes to being sick, and the crazy shit that they make them drink, is that often people pass off the responsibility of prepping their own food or being sick and then saying oh no, I'll just eat what my mum gives me. Next minute, they're having, the foods that probably got them to the reason why they wanted to lose weight in the first place. They're probably having, multiple roti with dal that's made in specific ways. They're probably having little bits of snacks here and chevro here, and, having gatia here, and they're having little bits of dokri or whatever they're having. They're having different food sources than they would do daily. And they're the food sources that kind of why they wanted to go on the diet in the first place was causing that. So they let their parents take over, which is not bad at all. I let my parents take over before, but, my mum would come with a cup of tea and biscuits. And I'd be like, fine, when you're eight, that's fine. But when you're 25 and your mum comes with tea and biscuits and you're trying to lose weight, have a word with yourself in that way, shape, or form. That's, it's really key to take that responsibility. And it always comes down to communication. Always does, right? Because if your mum and dad, in my logical sense, would have seen you do the prepping and do the food sources where they know that you're on a diet, and then you're trying to do these sources, and they can prep you those particular foods. Mum, can you just grab the chicken out of the fridge and just drop me some salad? And that's fine. And maybe your appetite's lower, so you probably don't want to have that, but you could have some forms of those foods so that you can stay on course with treating yourself with a helpful thinking pattern as opposed to an unhelpful thinking pattern, which will come down to you feeding what the actual cause is, which is vitamins and minerals, as opposed to feeding your emotions, which will be dominoes. As well as that, during these times, because of the nature of whether hunger might go up or down, or the nature of not being able to really control your food completely, you're not controlling your activity, I would definitely recommend on these flu days or these sick days not to track or not want to have fat loss. You don't want to force fat loss on these days, because ultimately you're going to be in bed, not moving very much. And therefore, it's going to be, eating low calories. Whereas you could have a maintenance day about fueling yourself with the right types of foods, where you've got enough in your system to not be more hungry lying in bed. There's nothing worse than being idle and hungry at the same time. So having those factors is going to be really, really key. So just make sure that you're not emotionally rationalizing your decisions. That's an unhelpful thinking pattern. Also, it's really common that another unhelpful thinking pattern, which is all or nothing, tends to go away. It tends to increase when people do end up having the flu. They're like, oh, I'm not being able to train today. I'm not being able to stick to my plan. So fuck it. But actually there's a gray area. We want to kind of stick to maintenance on those days. It's not a negative that you do one day at maintenance. You still hypothetically 6 days before would have got fat loss if you were all in. So therefore, it's a process, and actually taking these gray days is really important, and not looking at a black and white. So gray days are really, really important for everybody, because not everyone's perfect and they're not meant to be perfect. Life goes on, shit goes on, and we're not meant to be 100% all of the time. Call it a gray day if you need to, have gray days as much as you can, because the more days that you have white and the more days that you have black, the more you move away from your goals, because you'll do it in spurts and then, go white, which means that you do nothing. So you gain your weight back, and you do spurts of red, and then you do spurts of black. And then you do everything for a period of time. And you come away and do white again. Whereas if you were gray in the middle, you just do this. chalk up time over time, and you just be making forward moves as much as you can over time. And if it was not a forward move on that day, who gives a fuck? It'll be a forward move tomorrow. And if that's not a forward move, it's a backwards day, that's absolutely fine. Make tomorrow a more forward day. It's the grey that we need to have. So guys, hope you enjoyed this podcast. It's a short one from me. If you are feeling sick, or you're feeling like you are need to kind of take some time off the gym when you are fluey or got COVID or Omicron, hopefully this helps to kind of give you some stress relief of like how to rest up easier. 2, look at the mindset around food during this time period. And 3 is just give yourself that scaling and work towards the scale over time to see how you can get on and start rating yourself better on a day-to-day basis, so you can know when you're feeling good and when you're not feeling too good at all. Have a nice day.